Hey guys, tonight we are going to slip into a quieter time. You are standing just outside a small wooden house, the kind with sliding paper walls and tatami mats that whisper underfoot. The sun has barely started to rise, and mist hangs low over the hills. A rooster calls somewhere in the distance, but even he sounds unsure this early in the day. A pair of sandals sit by the door. They are made of twisted rice straw, light in your hand, but sturdy enough to carry a warrior across miles of road. These are the shoes of a samurai. You pick them up and feel the woven texture under your fingertips. The day has not begun yet, but already, these simple shoes seem to carry the weight of 1,000 stories. Now, let's be honest, you probably would not last 5 minutes in the daily life of a samurai. You would miss your coffee, complain about the sandals, and ask if the sword came with a carrying case. But still, there is something calming in imagining that world. The quiet routines, the ritual of tying each knot just right, and the dignity in humble things like sandals made from straw. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I really mean that. If you do, feel free to leave a comment with your current location and what time it is as you listen. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins with feet, not in the modern, well-pedicured way, but in the most practical sense. A samurai's life meant moving constantly, often on foot. Horses were prized but rare. For many, walking was the rule, not the exception. This brings us to a seemingly small but deeply important object in their lives, the waraji. These were sandals woven from rice straw, worn by warriors, monks, farmers, and almost everyone in between. You bend down and slide your feet into a pair. There is no cushioning, no arch support, and certainly no foam. The soles are flat, the straps scratchy at first, and they do not come in sizes. Instead, they are tied to fit, custom by necessity. It connects you directly to the ground. You feel every pebble, every dip in the earth. Somehow, it feels more honest. Samurai wore these sandals every day. Even high-ranking warriors often stuck to straw. It was cheap, easy to make, and surprisingly effective. The sandals were usually replaced after just a few days of wear. Sometimes, a single long march could shred them to pieces. But they were light, breathable, and quiet mattered. The samurai code, or bushido, was not all duels and poetry. It included things like walking softly, maintaining composure, and avoiding unnecessary luxury. Leather might last longer, but it made noise. Straw whispered. It suited the mood. You picture yourself walking along a forest trail. Leaves crunch underfoot, but the sandals barely make a sound. You can hear your own breathing. The path winds beside a stream. The air smells of cedar and wet earth. There is a sword at your hip, but it feels like a formality. No battles today, just this long, peaceful road ahead. Your feet are already starting to ache, but in a distant, meditative way. Historians still argue whether the preference for rice straw sandals came from practicality or from cultural ideals. Some believe it was purely a matter of cost and convenience. Others point to the deeper philosophy of transience, impermanence, and humility that wove itself through the fabric of Japanese life. Wearing something that would fall apart in 3 days might seem inconvenient to you, but to a samurai, it might have been the point. There is something strangely soothing about that. You do not need shoes that last forever. You only need them to carry you through today. Then tomorrow, you make another pair. In fact, many samurai learned to make their own sandals. It was one of those basic skills you picked up early, like tying your hakama or cleaning your blade. Knowing how to weave waraji was part of being self-sufficient. It was like knowing how to boil rice or sharpen a stick into a spear. Not glamorous, but essential. And speaking of rice, it is hard not to smile at the fact that the same plant that fed you also dressed your feet. Rice was everywhere. You ate it, offered it to spirits, traded it for favors, and, yes, twisted its dry stalks into something you could wear. It makes you think twice the next time you see a grain stuck in your sushi mat. A quirky bit of trivia for you. Some waraji had extra straw added under the heel or toe for longer journeys. Others were double-layered. These deluxe models were popular with messengers or soldiers assigned to long patrols. Think of them as the ancient equivalent of hiking boots. Not fancy, but a step up from basic. And while we are here, let's have a little fun. Imagine going to a modern shoe store that sells only straw footwear. You ask the sales clerk if they come in waterproof. They say no. You ask for arch support. They raise an eyebrow. You ask if there is a loyalty program. They hand you a fistful of straw and say, "Congratulations, you now have 2 pairs." Jokes aside, the waraji worked. They got the job done. They were functional, biodegradable, and beautifully plain. They left soft imprints in dirt paths and vanished when tossed into a stream. No carbon footprint, no synthetic glue, just rice and time and rope. As the morning mist starts to lift, you take your first real steps in the sandals. The trail ahead is long, but quiet. You hear distant bird calls, the rustle of bamboo, and the steady rhythm of your own footsteps. Straw and skin, earth and toe. There is nothing between you and the land, and for once, that feels exactly right. Your feet are still adjusting. Each step in the straw sandals feels new. They do not cushion your sole as the way modern shoes do. There is a gentle pressure under the arch, a slight rub at the ankle where the straps twist around. But the more you walk, the more your stride softens. You begin to fall into rhythm, your movements quieter, more thoughtful. Now you are not just wearing the sandals. You are walking like someone from another time. Your weight shifts differently. You notice the ground more. A rock is not just a rock anymore. It is something to avoid or brace against. A slope is a challenge, not a convenience. You are no longer floating through the world. You are part of it. Feet, in this era, are a language. Where you place them, how loudly they fall, and what covers them all speak volumes about your role in society. The samurai class, though ranked high, often walked, not just out of necessity, but because there was dignity in it. Feet first, always. When entering a home, you leave your sandals outside. Clean feet, clean mind. It is a quiet ritual, one that tells the host, "I come with respect. I come without dirt. I come ready to sit still and listen." And then there is the sound, or the lack of it. In straw sandals, you cannot stomp. You glide. They make a faint rustle at most. If you are careful, even that disappears. This softness was not just aesthetic. It had a function. It made you a shadow, not a drumbeat. In the dojo, this mattered. On patrol at night, this mattered. A loud warrior was a careless one. This is one reason why waraji endured, even when other options were available. Leather shoes existed, so did wooden geta. They clacked and creaked. They echoed on stones. But waraji simply whispered. Imagine a squad of samurai moving through a narrow path, each footstep light, almost soundless. There is no shouting, no clanging metal, just rustling clothes and the faint shift of straw on gravel. Even their breath is measured. It is not fear that keeps them quiet. It is discipline. Historians still argue whether the quietness of waraji was by design or happy accident. Some point to the materials and say it was the best people had. Others believe it was part of a greater philosophy, where subtlety and awareness were prized over flamboyance. No one agrees fully, but the results speak for themselves. In time, you learn to appreciate what your feet are telling you. When a strap loosens, you stop, not because it hurts, but because it disrupts the flow. You kneel, retie, and feel the tension return. That little tug means you are grounded again. Back in the day, sandals wore out quickly. A few days of travel could reduce them to a pile of straw, so people often carried extras. Travelers would tie a spare pair to their belts. You might see a samurai with 2 or 3 pairs hanging like quiet flags. Always prepared, always walking. There was a kind of economy to it. Waraji were made from what was already there. Rice straw was everywhere. After harvest, the stalks were dried, bundled, and twisted. Nothing was wasted. Even the worn-out pairs had a use. They could be burned for heat, used in kindling, or tossed into compost. They returned to the earth quickly, no landfill required. The process of making them was not hard, but it required care. The straw had to be soaked first, made pliable. Then it was woven in a precise pattern, with tighter coils for durability. Children learned by watching their elders. It was not glamorous work, but it was proud work, and the result? A simple, silent companion. Nothing fancy, just enough. A quirky little detail for you. Some oraji had loops that were tied to the big toe, others wrapped across the instep. There were regional differences in style. Some areas used black dyed straw, others preferred a golden look. You could tell where someone was from just by looking at their shoes. One famous anecdote tells of a samurai who refused to replace his sandals during a march, even though they had nearly fallen apart. He said the discomfort reminded him of his duty, that every painful step brought him closer to enlightenment. Or, maybe, he just wanted to avoid tying a new pair. Hard to say. Still, that kind of stubborn poetry was not rare. Pain and discipline were deeply linked. A tight sandal, a sore arch, even a few blisters were seen as part of the path. Modern comfort might raise an eyebrow at this, but back then, endurance was a badge of honor. You continue your walk. The sun is climbing now, warming your shoulders. The mist is gone, replaced by the buzz of cicadas. A distant river gurgles to your left. You feel calmer, not because the road is easy, but because you have stopped fighting it. That is something the samurai knew. That peace did not come from ease, but from movement, from the regular rhythm of the road, from simple tools that carried you forward, from understanding that even the smallest things, like sandals made from rice straw, can hold meaning. And so you walk, one foot, then the next, lightly, steadily, silently. There is no rush, just the soft crunch of straw and the long road ahead. Now that you have walked a few miles in your new footwear, it is time to understand what exactly is under your feet. The waraji may look simple, but they are anything but careless. Each pair begins as a bundle of rice straw. After the rice is harvested, the stalks are left behind. Most people would think of that as trash, but not in feudal Japan. Here, the leftovers become the beginning of something useful. A second life, not an ending. The straw is dried in the sun, then soaked to make it pliable. Once it is soft enough, it is twisted into cords. Then the weaving begins. If you ever get the chance to try this, you will realize quickly that making a sandal is harder than it looks. The warp and weft must be balanced. The length has to match your foot exactly. The loops need to be tight, but not tight enough to dig in. It is a quiet, patient art. In villages, it is often the elders who do the weaving. They sit cross-legged outside their homes, their fingers moving with practiced ease. A sandal might take an hour or two for a skilled hand. Less, if the person is quick. A child might sit beside them, helping to twist straw or measure cord. It becomes more than a chore. It is a way of passing time, of passing knowledge, of passing something forward. This is how the samurai get their shoes. Not from a store, not from a delivery, but from a neighbor, a tradesman, a friend. Maybe even from themselves. Some samurai preferred to make their own, not out of pride, but out of necessity. On long campaigns, you could not always rely on someone else to carry spares. You learned to do it all. Historians still debate whether waraji makers were considered artisans in the same way that swordsmiths or armorers were. Some argue yes, since the skill required was significant and the demand was high. Others claim no, pointing out that anyone could learn the basics and that the materials were humble. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. What is certain is that the sandal maker held a quiet place in the community. Not flashy, not heroic, but important. And then there is the smell. Yes, even that matters. Fresh waraji smell faintly of hay. A clean, green scent that fades as you wear them in. Get them wet, and they smell like rice paddies after the rain. Dry them by the fire, and they pick up the soft scent of smoke. Your feet become storytellers, carrying the scent of wherever you have been. You can imagine a tired soldier, sitting by the fire after a long march. His sandals are steaming beside him. He is quiet, maybe sipping rice water or chewing a bit of dried persimmon. He looks at his waraji, frayed, darkened, and falling apart, but he is grateful for them. They held him up when the mud pulled him down. They did not complain. A small, quirky fact for you. Some travelers would write charms on strips of paper and tie them into their sandals. Worn against the sole, the charm would protect them from injury, fatigue, or misfortune, a sort of wearable luck. Others would press coins into the straw before weaving, creating a walking talisman. Every step became a blessing. Of course, the Waraji were not perfect. They wore out quickly. In rocky terrain, they frayed fast. In snow, they became useless. In cities, the stone roads would chew through the straw within hours. Samurai often carried extras, not just out of habit, but out of necessity. Marching armies left trails of worn-out sandals like breadcrumbs. You pause for a moment on your own walk. The trail curves beside a row of cypress trees. Their trunks are tall and straight, their shadows long and gentle. You can feel the difference between the worn path and the grassy edge. Your sandals respond with each step, flexing slightly, whispering against the dirt. There is no insulation, no separation between you and the earth, and that, in a strange way, is what makes them beautiful. The Waraji does not protect you from the world, it invites you into it. You feel the road, the coolness of morning soil, the grit of loose sand, the slight rise of a tree root under your heel. It is not comfortable, but it is real. You begin to understand why some warriors preferred this feeling. It keeps you alert, grounded, honest. A soft shoe can make you lazy. A straw sandal reminds you to pay attention. There is an old saying, a man who ignores his feet will not survive the mountain. It sounds dramatic, but when you live in Waraji, it rings true. If you walk carelessly, you fall. If you tie them poorly, you limp. If you forget to dry them, you suffer. Every day becomes a conversation with your feet. And in that way, the Waraji is more than just footwear. It becomes a companion, a mirror, a map of your patience and care. If your shoes fall apart, it is not just the road that is to blame. It is how you met the road. So, you keep walking, adjusting your pace, feeling the ground, listening to the soft hush of straw against earth. No drama, no flair, just the quiet company of a pair of sandals made from the simplest thing imaginable. And yet, somehow, they carry the soul of a warrior. The world around you shifts as you travel farther along the trail. You pass from forested hills into a more open plain. The grass waves gently in the breeze, and the road ahead stretches into the distance. With every step, the sandals adjust slightly, settling against your foot, becoming more a part of you than an accessory. The friction of straw on skin becomes a familiar rhythm, something your body learns to accept and even find comfort in. But why did warriors in a highly hierarchical society, where armor gleamed and swords were custom forged, choose to wear such basic footwear? The answer, like many things in history, is a blend of practicality and culture. War-shaped footwear in surprising ways. In feudal Japan, armies often moved fast and light. Horses were not as widely available as you might think, and they were expensive to maintain. Most warriors, especially foot soldiers and even many samurai, walked. For long distances, the Waraji made more sense than heavy boots or stiff wooden sandals. Imagine climbing a rocky hillside in stiff leather shoes. The ground gives, but your soles do not. The edges cut into your skin, and soon your ankles blister. Now, imagine walking the same path in Waraji. The straw molds itself to the terrain. It breathes. It dries quickly after rain. It bends with you. You are not fighting your footwear. You are working with it. That kind of harmony mattered. The samurai lived by a code that valued balance, self-awareness, and endurance. Their clothing, tools, and habits all reflected that. The sword was revered, of course, but so were the small things. A well-tied obi, a clean cup of tea, and yes, a humble pair of sandals. Historians still debate whether the widespread use of Waraji was truly a strategic choice or simply a default. Some argue that they were chosen because they were easy to replace and easy to make. Others suggest they reflected a deeper philosophical commitment to modesty and impermanence. After all, something that wore out quickly reminded you not to become too attached. In times of war, there was no room for excess. A pair of sandals that cost nothing, weighed little, and could be burned at the end of a campaign was ideal. Armies could travel farther, carry more food, and move with less noise. When battle was near, the last thing you wanted was for your shoes to give you away. The terrain also mattered. Japan's landscape is famously mountainous, with narrow trails and uneven ground. Heavy footwear would have been more of a hindrance than a help. The waraji, light and flexible, allowed soldiers to move easily through forests, cross rivers, and even run when needed. It gave them agility in a world where speed could mean survival. You continue along the road, your own waraji brushing gently against the earth. The fields open into terraces, their edges marked with stone walls. You pass a farmer leading an ox, both moving at a slow, steady pace. His feet are in straw sandals too. His stride matches yours. There is no hurry. You can almost picture the past unfolding around you. A group of samurai returning from patrol, dusty and sunburned. Their waraji are darkened with use. Their steps are slow, but purposeful. No one speaks much. The road has a way of quieting people. The crunch of straw against soil is enough. One quirky detail you might enjoy: during long marches, warriors would stuff medicinal herbs into their sandals. Not for magic, but for comfort and hygiene. Things like mugwort and pine needles helped reduce odor, kept bugs away, and sometimes offered a mild cooling effect. Imagine your sneakers doing that. And yes, the waraji could also serve as bandages in an emergency. The straw cords, once unraveled, could be used to tie a wound or brace a sprained ankle. They were multi-purpose, the original multi-tool of the feet. You might be wondering what happened in bad weather. The answer is simple: you got wet. Waraji were not waterproof. In the rain, they soaked quickly, and in the cold, they offered no insulation. Soldiers sometimes wore layers of cloth underneath to help. Others just endured. Wet feet were part of life. Still, their ability to dry quickly made them more useful than leather in many cases. You could hang them near a fire, and within an hour or two, they were ready again. Some warriors even carried thin strips of bamboo to help reshape them after drying. A soggy, warped sandal was just as dangerous as a slippery rock. As you keep walking, the wind picks up slightly. You pull your rope tighter and watch the path ahead. The rhythm of your steps slows. Your thoughts begin to drift. Maybe this is what they felt too, those samurai who walked for hours without end. A kind of moving meditation, a steady pace, a quiet mind. The waraji did not promise comfort. It offered presence. Every pebble, every root, every shift of the path was something to feel, not avoid. You could not be distracted. You had to listen with your feet. This was part of the training. Young warriors were taught not just how to fight, but how to endure, how to walk long distances without complaint, how to tie their sandals so they would not slip, how to carry spares without letting them drag in the mud. It was all part of the path. And so you walk too? Not because you must, but because the walking itself has become something gentle, something quiet. The road hums beneath your soles, the wind stirs the grass, and the distant mountains seem closer now. Your sandals do not shield you from the world, they invite you into it. Your feet continue to move with steady rhythm. The road turns slightly, and ahead you spot a wooden gate, half hidden by a grove of tall pine trees. Beyond it lies a small village, the kind you might see painted on a scroll. Thatched roofs, low fences, and narrow paths made of packed dirt. A few chickens wander past. A woman kneels by a pot outside her home, stirring rice. The air smells of steam, wood smoke, and something faintly sweet. Your sandals crunch softly as you approach the gate. A child glances up from his game, notices your shoes, and smiles. He is barefoot, but his older brother, sitting nearby with a piece of straw in his hand, is learning to weave. Not a toy, not a chore. He is making his first pair of waraji. Let's talk about what goes underneath the sandals. The samurai did not wear them barefoot. That would be impractical, even uncomfortable. Instead, they wore a kind of split-toe sock called tabi, made from cotton or hemp. The tabi hugged the foot and allowed the big toe to move independently. This made it easier to grip the sandal's thong and keep it from slipping. Imagine your big toe doing just a bit more work than usual. Tabi were white for formal occasions, But in daily life, they could be gray, indigo, or natural brown. They were durable, washable, and occasionally patched. Wearing a torn tabby was considered a bit sloppy, especially for someone of rank. Clean socks meant clean mind. It was part of the discipline. You pass through the village quietly. A few elders sit outside, weaving straw into sandals. Their hands move without looking, muscle memory honed by decades. A small fire crackles beside them, heating a kettle of tea. You bow slightly, and they return the gesture. Your sandals, still in decent shape, mark you as a traveler, not a laborer, not a farmer, and not quite a soldier. Somewhere in between, the tabi and waraji together made up a complete foot system, one suited for walking, waiting, and sometimes fighting. While it is rare to imagine a samurai battling in straw shoes, it did happen. On the field, function mattered more than fashion. Waraji gave traction and flexibility. They did not catch on branches like heavier boots might, and they could be kicked off quickly if needed. Historians still debate whether warriors ever modified their waraji for battle. Some suggest they added layers or inserts for protection. Others argue that such adjustments were impractical and that speed mattered more. The truth might be somewhere in between, as it often is. Personal preference, terrain, and the kind of mission likely played a role. And then there is the little trick of tightening. Waraji were tied around the foot and ankle using cords of the same straw or sometimes thin rope. There were specific knots for specific needs. A patrol knot was different from a village visit knot. One held tight over long distances. Another was easier to slip off before entering a home. Knowing how to tie the right knot was as important as knowing how to swing a sword. You pause at a small shrine on the edge of the village. A stone basin sits by the path, filled with cool water. You wash your hands, then your feet, just as travelers once did. The water stings slightly on your soles. You sit on a nearby bench and inspect your sandals. A few strands are fraying, nothing serious, but worth noting. A boy approaches, holding a half-finished sandal. He shows it to you, grinning shyly. You nod. The weave is uneven, but the effort is clear. He tells you he is learning from his grandfather, that someday he will make sandals for all the samurai who pass through. You smile. It is a quiet kind of pride. There is a story told in some villages about a sandal maker who saved a warrior's life. The warrior's sandal broke just before a river crossing. The maker repaired it with extra straw, weaving fast as the rain fell. The warrior crossed safely, reached his commander in time, and turned the tide of a battle. No one remembers the warrior's name, but the sandal maker became a local legend. A quirky detail for you. Some weavers like to hide a symbol or stitch into their sandals. A kind of maker's mark, not visible unless you look closely, but they're all the same. A spiral, a flower, a single thread of red. It was not about fame. It was about leaving something behind. A quiet signature on a quiet craft. You slip your feet back into your sandals, now a bit damp from the basin. They tighten again, hugging your soles. The sensation is familiar, almost comforting. You rise and continue walking, past the shrine and into the fields beyond. The world here moves slowly. You hear the creak of a cart in the distance. A crane lifts from the river bank. The wind stirs the rice plants. The trail narrows, bordered by tall grass and the occasional stone marker. Your footsteps fall in time with your breath. There is something soothing about this balance. The tabi protect your skin, the waraji connect you to the ground, and the rhythm of walking becomes your focus. No thoughts of destination, no rush, just the journey. It makes you wonder how many warriors found moments of peace on roads like this. Not in the thrill of battle, but in the simple act of moving forward, of tying their sandals just right, of feeling the road change beneath them and changing with it. The tabi, soft and snug. The waraji, rough but responsive. Together, they carry you through this quiet part of history, a part without glory, without speeches, without monuments, just footsteps, slowly taken, across the land. You follow a narrow trail now, one that snakes through tall grass and climbs gently toward a cluster of thatched houses on a low hillside. Smoke rises from a chimney nearby, curling into the morning sky. The sound of a loom creaks softly from one of the homes. Chickens cluck in the distance, And then, you hear it. The rhythmic swish and twist of straw and practiced hands. Welcome to a sandal workshop. It is not a formal shop, not with signs or counters, just a home, open at the front, with bundles of straw hanging like curtain beads from the eaves. Inside, two men are seated cross-legged on straw mats, weaving. Their fingers move in a blur. One is younger, his brow furrowed with concentration. The other is older, calm and quick, his hands moving almost without thought. You pause nearby and watch. The younger man hesitates, untangles a knot, and begins again. The older man completes a sandal in the time it takes you to blink. He starts on another, chatting idly as he works. The topic is not dramatic, just the weather, the thickness of the last harvest, whether the new apprentice is tying the heel loop too tight. The younger man holds up his sandal. It is decent, not perfect. The sole curls slightly. One strap is shorter than the other. But it will work, and that is what matters here. These sandals are not meant to be admired. They are meant to be used. Sandal making was often a seasonal craft, most active after the rice harvest. Villagers would gather the leftover straw, dry it thoroughly, and begin weaving in late autumn. During winter, when farm work slowed, the whole family might help. Even children could twist cords or prepare the bundles. It was quiet work, done indoors near the fire, often while someone told stories or recited poems. The sandals that emerged were practical, but they carried the warmth of community. A skilled maker could weave a sandal in less than 30 minutes, but speed was not everything. The balance of the weave, the strength of the straps, and the tightness of the knots all had to be just right. Too loose, and the sandal would fall apart on the road. Too tight, and it would cut into your foot. There was a kind of muscle memory involved, like playing an instrument or folding paper cranes. Historians still debate whether there were formal sandal-making guilds, like those for armorers and swordsmiths. Some believe certain regions developed reputations for their techniques, passing methods down through generations. Others say sandal-making was too widespread, too everyday, to be formalized. What is certain is that knowledge traveled with the sandals themselves. A traveler might carry a particular style from one province to another. Over time, small details changed. A new knot, a different way of finishing the heel, innovation by accident. As you stand at the edge of the workshop, a woman arrives with a bundle of fresh straw. She bows slightly, sets it down, and begins sorting it by length and color. The straw is golden, still fragrant from the sun. Some will become sandals. The rest may be used for mats or rope. Nothing goes to waste. One quirky tradition from some mountain villages involved measuring children's growth by their sandals. Each year, a pair would be saved and tied to the rafters of the house. Over time, a line of tiny straw shoes would dangle above the hearth, a living timeline made from footsteps. You watch as the older weaver finishes another pair and lays them aside. He tests the straps with a tug, nods in approval, and begins again. His hands do not pause. It is as if the movement calms him. You can see how the repetition, the texture, the faint rustle of straw against fingers could become its own kind of meditation. There is no glamour here, no crowds, just usefulness. One pair after another, each one a quiet gift to someone's journey. You are offered a place to sit, and without speaking, the younger weaver hands you a bundle of straw. He gestures to your own sandals. The meaning is clear. Would you like to try? You do. The straw is firm, a bit scratchy. The cords twist more easily than you expect. You mimic what you saw. Loop, cross, twist, tighten. The pattern is not simple, but it has a logic. You begin to see how everything fits. It is like a puzzle you solve with your hands instead of your eyes. The older man watches but says nothing. His nod tells you enough. You will not become a master today, but you have started something. A short while later, you stand again. Your sandals are still holding. The road calls. The weavers offer you a pouch of dried plums and a nod. You return both with gratitude. As you step outside, you feel different. Not just because of what you learned, but because of what it meant. These sandals are not just tools. They are tradition. They are connection. They are proof that something made with patience and care, even from the humblest of materials, can carry someone far. You follow the path down from the hill, past the quiet homes and into the open land once more. Your feet are steady. The sandals flex with every step. Each one feels lighter than the last. The path now leads through countryside, wide and gentle. The wind carries the soft scent of pine and damp soil. You can hear frogs calling from somewhere nearby, and the distant rustle of leaves like a whispered conversation. Your straw sandals press softly into the dirt, each step a quiet imprint on the changing earth beneath you. With every passing mile, the terrain begins to shift. The dry, cracked paths of late summer give way to the softer trails of autumn. Fallen leaves gather in clusters. Some stick to the solace of your waraji. You do not brush them off. You let them ride along for a bit, like passengers on your journey. The seasons in Japan are not subtle. They arrive with confidence. Spring brings warm breezes and cherry blossoms that fall like gentle snow. Summer is humid, a wall of heat rising from the soil. Autumn sweeps in with cool mornings and golden fields. And then comes winter, quiet and sharp, turning every surface brittle. Walking through these seasons in waraji offers its own kind of education. In summer, the sandals breathe. Your feet stay dry. Sweat escapes easily through the straw. You step lightly on warm dirt, and even long walks feel manageable. This is when waraji are at their best. But the rains come, and everything changes. The straw soaks easily. At first, it cools your feet, which is not unpleasant. But if the walk continues, the sandals begin to sag. The cords loosen. The straw darkens. It no longer grips the foot. Each step becomes heavier. You learn to adapt. You tighten your knots. You adjust your pace. You walk around puddles, even if it means taking the long way. In winter, the straw stiffens. If left out overnight, a sandal can freeze into a solid curve. The cold bites through the tabi, and walking becomes a test of will. Soldiers in northern provinces learn to double layer their socks, stuffing scraps of cloth or even dry moss between foot and sandal. Others rubbed ash into their feet, believing it trapped heat. Some of it worked. Most of it was just stubborn hope. Historians still debate whether waraji were truly practical year-round. In coastal areas with milder winters, they made sense. But in snowbound regions, leather boots or cloth-wrapped footwear became more common. Still, many warriors clung to their straw sandals out of habit or belief. To change them was to break routine, to abandon something familiar. So they adjusted instead. A curious little detail for you. During especially rainy months, sandal makers sometimes wove thin bamboo slats into the soles to help them keep their shape. It gave the waraji a bit more structure, helped them last longer, and made them less slippery on muddy roads. These were not common, but in areas where roads turned to rivers, they became valuable. You pass by a stretch of forest now, where the leaves overhead filter the light into shifting shades of green and gold. The ground is soft here, covered in fallen pine needles and moss. Your sandals feel at home on this path. The texture beneath you is forgiving. Your stride lengthens. You start to notice how the land speaks to your feet. Stones offer resistance. Mud warns you to slow down. Dry grass makes a faint hissing sound as you move through it. In waraji, you are never separated from this language. You hear every syllable, every whisper. This is one reason why monks and pilgrims also wore waraji. Not just because they were cheap and replaceable, but because they encouraged awareness. Every step was deliberate. Every footfall became part of a rhythm. Walking turned into meditation. The road itself became a teacher. You remember the village weaver's hands, how they moved without hesitation. He knew his seasons too. In spring, the straw was soft and green. In summer, it was strong. In autumn, it grew brittle. By winter, it snapped in your fingers. A good weaver chose his materials with the same care a poet chooses words. You reach a bend in the path and find a place to rest, a flat stone, warmed by the sun. You sit and stretch your legs. The waraji have molded themselves to your feet now. The straps no longer itch. The soles curve gently at your arches. You press your toes into the earth and feel the way the sandals respond, flexing like a second skin. A small breeze stirs the leaves. Somewhere nearby, a deer steps lightly through the trees. You can hear it before you see it, the faintest crunch of leaves. You freeze, listening. Your own sandals are silent. That is the gift of Waraji. They do not interrupt. They do not declare your presence. They let you move through the world like you belong in it. The sun is lower now. The light is golden and soft. You stand, brush off your robes, and begin walking again. The air carries the cool promise of evening. Your sandals find their rhythm easily. You feel the changing season not just in the air, but in the way your feet respond to the ground. Some parts of the trail are slick with early frost. Others are still dry from the midday warmth. You adjust your steps without thinking. You are learning the language of the land, and with each step, you understand the samurai a little more, not through their battles or their victories, but through their walking, through their daily choices, through the way they move through seasons without complaint, adjusting, learning, and continuing forward. The road ahead flattens again, cutting across a wide field where tall grasses sway gently in the wind. The sky above stretches open and bright. You walk in silence, your footsteps light, the straw sandals quietly shaping to each contour of the path. By now, they feel like an extension of you. Not shoes, not tools, but something closer to habit. You begin to notice something else about the way you carry yourself. You walk straighter. Your posture has adjusted. There is a sense of purpose in your stride, even though there is no real destination. That, too, is part of the samurai tradition. Among warriors, appearance mattered, not for vanity, but for presence. A composed figure, a tidy robe, a clean pair of tabi, and yes, even simple waraji, these were all part of the image. They spoke not of wealth, but of order, and sometimes, choosing the simple thing was the most powerful statement of all. Imagine two warriors standing side by side. One wears heavy boots, polished and expensive. The other wears straw sandals, worn but clean. It is the second who draws more attention. There is something intriguing in his choice. Is it humility, experience, or something else entirely? In truth, some elite samurai did have access to finer shoes, leather boots lined with silk, wooden clogs lacquered and carved, yet many chose waraji, even in formal settings. Historians still argue whether this was a matter of principle or practicality. Some say it reflected the value placed on simplicity. Others believe it was about quiet defiance, a way of showing that status did not need decoration. There are records of high-ranking generals arriving to court in straw sandals. When questioned, they replied simply that they came from the field, that they served first, and dressed later. This earned them respect. Sometimes, silence carries more weight than ceremony. It is a curious thought, how status can be woven into straw, not with gold threads or hidden coins, but with posture, with confidence, with the choice to wear something because it serves its purpose and nothing more. You reach a fork in the road. One path leads through a grove of bamboo, the other climbs toward a ridgeline. You choose the grove, drawn by the soft rustling sound of the leaves. The air cools immediately as you step into the shade. Your sandals whisper against the narrow path, the occasional twig snapping gently beneath your heel. Bamboo groves were common resting places for travelers. Cool in summer, sheltered in rain, they offered a moment of peace. You can almost imagine a samurai stopping here, untying his sandals, massaging his feet. Not every moment in a warrior's life was filled with fire and fury. Many were like this, quiet, slow, uneventful, and yet those moments told a story. A man who takes care of his feet likely takes care of his thoughts. A man who walks without rushing, who chooses straw over polish, who steps quietly rather than loudly, tells you something without words. A quirky note, in some poems from the Edo period, straw sandals became a symbol of wisdom, not grandeur or success, but of someone who had walked far, seen much, and returned quietly. The sandal was proof of the journey, not a badge of pride. You pause beneath a particularly tall stalk of bamboo. Its trunk is thick, its leaves brushing overhead. You sit again, this time to remove your sandals and check the solace. A few strands are fraying now. The toe loop is a little loose. You retie it, gently pulling the straw snug against your tabi. The motion is simple, but there is pleasure in it. Your hands know what to do. You run your fingers over the bottom of the sandal, feeling where the weave has softened from wear. This tells you something, too. which part of your foot bears the most weight, how your steps land, what kind of walker you are. Even in something so small, there is reflection. You place the sandals back on your feet and resume your walk. The path narrows now, bordered on both sides by stone markers etched with worn characters. Pilgrims once walked this way, perhaps monks, perhaps soldiers seeking forgiveness. Each one left a trace, not on the stones, but on the path itself. Footsteps carried prayers just as much as voices did. The samurai understood this. They knew that how you moved mattered, that choosing humble sandals was not about looking poor, but about staying grounded. Straw kept you close to the earth. To wear waraji was to remember that no matter how high your rank, you still walked like everyone else. And maybe that was the point, to be reminded, every day, with every step, that you are not separate from the world, you were part of it. You leave the grove and emerge onto a wide trail once more. The breeze picks up, carrying the scent of water. A river must be near. You feel the earth change beneath your feet. Softer, siltier, your sandals adjust again. The path continues. So do you, quietly, lightly, without needing to say anything at all. The wind carries a faint scent of river water as you follow the trail downhill. The trees thin, and you hear the babble of a stream before you see it. When it comes into view, it is a narrow but lively current, winding between rocks polished smooth by time. A footbridge stretches across it, made of thick wooden planks, damp with moss. You pause before crossing, taking in the sight. The river is shallow but fast. The stones beneath shimmer in the light. It is the kind of crossing samurai would have encountered often, especially during long patrols or campaigns. And it raises a question you have probably wondered by now. How did they keep their sandals on? Waraji were not simply slipped on. They were tied, carefully and deliberately, with loops that wrapped around the ankle and over the instep. The exact knot varied by region, and sometimes even by occasion. But it always had the same goal, to keep the sandal snug without cutting circulation, and to keep the sole firmly beneath the foot. You kneel and examine your own. The cords are twisted just right. Not too tight, not too loose. They pull the sandal close to your skin, yet still allow it to move with you. This is no accident. Learning to tie your waraji properly was as essential as learning to wield a sword. A poorly tied knot could lead to a twisted ankle or lost footing, both of which could spell disaster in battle or during a climb. Young samurai learned early how to tie their sandals, and how to adjust them on the go. There was even an unspoken pride in knowing how to fix a slipping knot without breaking stride. It was one of those small skills that separated the well-prepared from the careless. Historians still discuss whether there were officially taught methods of waraji tying, or whether it was a matter of personal habit. Some suggest certain schools of martial arts included it in their training, while others believe it was simply passed down informally, learned through repetition and necessity. You rise again and begin to cross the bridge. The planks creak faintly beneath you. The water rushes below. Your sandals grip the wood well enough. A little slippery, but manageable. You shorten your stride. Shift your balance forward. Adjust. Your feet are doing half the thinking. Once across, you notice a small shrine near the bank. It is old, its roof slightly askew, its lanterns unlit, yet it stands with quiet dignity. You approach, bow gently, and leave a smooth stone on its step, a small offering, not of coin or food, but of presence. As you turn to leave, you notice something etched into the wood beside the shrine, a set of foot-shaped carvings, worn by weather, perhaps a prayer for travelers, or perhaps a reminder. This place has been passed before. There is a phrase once spoken by traveling monks. You walk on your sandals, and your sandals walk on your past. It suggests that with each journey, you do not simply move forward. You also bring along the weight of every path you have taken. Your sandals remember, even if you do not. A quirky fact, samurai were known to replace only the solace of their waraji if the upper ties were still intact. They would unweave the bottom, gather fresh straw, and reweave a new sole using the original cords. In this way, part of the old journey always remained with them, a thread of continuity beneath each step. You begin walking again, and the trail climbs gently through a grove of short trees. The sunlight filters through like honey, warm and dappled. Birds flutter above, too quick to see clearly. A rabbit darts across the path. Your waraji flex with each incline, gripping the earth better than you expected. The roughness you felt in the beginning has softened. The straps have molded to your feet. There is a kind of elegance to it. No buckles, no metal clasps, just straw and skill, a handful of natural material and a well-practiced hand. You begin to wonder how many lives passed through waraji before they disappeared from common use. In some preserved temples, you can still find enormous straw sandals hung above the gates. These are not worn, of course, but made as offerings or symbols. Sometimes they reach 10 feet long. They represent protection, humility, and the journey. People pass beneath them for good fortune. Some even whisper their hopes upward, as if the sandals could carry prayers like footsteps. That image stays with you as you walk. A giant sandal, swaying gently in the wind, reminding all who pass that even the Midas began with a single step. You notice your own stride again. It has become quieter, not just in sound, but in intent. You no longer look for landmarks. You do not think of when the journey ends. The walk itself is enough. The texture of the path, the feel of the air, the sound of your breath, steady and low, and beneath it all, the gentle embrace of straw around your feet. No embellishment, no noise, just the simple genius of something designed to move with you, not ahead of you, and certainly not against you. Your waraji have become your rhythm, your balance, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful things are not heavy, or loud, or made to last forever. They are light, fragile, meant to be worn out, replaced, and woven again. The afternoon light begins to stretch long across the hills, bathing everything in a soft golden hue. The shadows of trees grow longer, stretching across the trail like gentle fingers. You continue to walk, your feet warmed by the sun, your sandals softening even more with each mile. The journey feels unhurried now. Your steps fall into a rhythm that is slower, but somehow more complete. You begin to think about the long marches undertaken by samurai in their waraji. These warriors walk not just across towns, but provinces, through forests, along mountain ridges, across muddy plains and narrow river crossings, and they did it all in footwear made from straw. It seems impossible by today's standards. Shoes today come with memory foam, air pockets, and shock absorbers. Yet the samurai chose thin soles and rough cords. And perhaps what makes it more remarkable is not just that they walked so far, but that they rarely complained. You start to understand this more as the ground beneath you begins to slope downward. The trail grows rocky. Small stones poke at the soles of your sandals. You feel them, not sharply, but with texture. Each stone leaves an impression, not painful, but present. It reminds you to watch your footing, to slow down, to be precise. Blisters were a constant companion for samurai during long journeys. Waraji, for all their strengths, offered no padding, just straw between your skin and the ground. After hours of walking, especially on rough paths or in wet weather, the skin would rub raw. But instead of avoiding the pain, the samurai prepared for it. They wrapped cloth under their tabi. Some carried small pouches of ash to keep their feet dry. Others used medicinal salves made from local herbs. And if a blister formed, they did not stop walking. They walked differently, more carefully, with more intention. Historians still argue whether these long marches hardened warriors or wore them down. Some believe the discomfort built resilience. Others say it slowly broke down the body. Either way, the marches continued because the path always lay ahead, and the waraji always wore thin. You reach a flatter part of the trail again, and the pressure underfoot eases. Your feet are grateful, but even that discomfort has passed without fuss. You did not panic. You did not need to sit and inspect. You adjusted, stepped differently, let the sandals shift with you. That is the quiet genius of waraji. They adapt. The straw weaves shift slightly as you move, bending to your steps rather than resisting them. They are not rigid. They are responsive, flexible, fragile in a way that makes them more alive. And perhaps that is why the samurai preferred them. There is dignity in walking through discomfort. and meeting the road honestly, without softening its edges. You do not glide, you walk, you notice, you listen with your feet. A quirky little detail. Some long-distance messengers during the Edo period were famous for their speed, running hundreds of kilometers in just a few days. They wore waraji, sometimes 3 or 4 pairs strapped to their belts. They would change them as they ran, tossing the worn ones aside. Their sandals were as important as the messages they carried. You pass a fallen tree by the side of the trail. Its trunk is hollow, moss-covered. You sit beside it to rest. You remove one sandal, just to look. The sole is thinner now. You can see where the cords have pressed into the ball of your foot. The heel is slightly worn, but it is holding. This is what the samurai lived with daily. Every step in those thin sandals brought them closer to wear, closer to pain, but also closer to mastery. You learned how to move efficiently, how to avoid unnecessary steps, how to conserve your strength. In some manuals for young warriors, alongside sword techniques and etiquette, were notes on how to walk, how to pace yourself on long marches, when to pause, how to tie your waraji so they would not slip when climbing or descending. The path was considered part of the training, not an obstacle, but a teacher. And the sandals, they were not praised, but they were respected. Never flashy, never revered, just always there, always beneath. You put your sandal back on, adjust the knot, and rise again. The sun has dipped lower now. The sky turns soft pink at the edges. The air cools slightly. A breeze moves through the trees, rustling the leaves and stirring the grasses. You begin walking once more, your feet remembering the shape of the road. Every step feels quieter now, not just in sound, but in weight. Your body has adjusted. The sandals no longer feel like something you are wearing. They feel like a part of how you walk. There is peace in that, in becoming so accustomed to the simplest things that they disappear into your rhythm. The samurai understood this well. Their swords, their robes, their waraji. None of it was decoration. It was all part of a pattern, a routine, a way of being. And so, with each step forward, you carry that with you. The discipline, the quiet endurance, the acceptance of a path that is never easy, but always worth walking. You look ahead. The trail bends again. The hills begin to rise in the distance. And still, your feet continue, worn but steady, wrapped in straw. Moving forward, the trail now curves along a narrow ridge. On one side, a view opens up to the valley below, green, dappled with low-lying mist, and still, on the other, a sheer wall of rock rises, streaked with moss and thyme. The air is cooler here, touched with the scent of pine needles and distant rain. Your feet move slowly, carefully, the waraji gripping the packed earth and pebbles underfoot. It's here that you start to think about the life cycle of the sandal itself. Not just how it was worn, but how it came to be in the first place. A quiet story of transformation, from field to foot. After a rice harvest, the fields were dotted with golden stubble. The grains had been collected, sorted, and stored. What remained was the straw, a byproduct in most places. But in Japan, it was valued, dried, bundled, and stored with care, because from that straw would come ropes, mats, raincoats, snow boots, and, of course, waraji. You picture a small farming village in autumn. The rice harvest complete, the family gathers the leftover straw and lays it out in neat rows to dry in the sun. Children run barefoot through the bundles. Grandparents sort the stalks by length and quality. The scent is earthy and warm, like tea leaves and dust after rain. Later, in the evening, they sit under the eaves. The lanterns glow softly. The straw is twisted into rope, bundled again, then set aside. A few pieces are already being shaped into sandals. The oldest son will carry a fresh pair on his trip to the nearby temple. The youngest daughter is learning to twist her first loop. This is how rice straw lived a second life. Not discarded, not forgotten, but transformed into something useful, something that would carry someone else forward. Historians still discuss how widespread this practice was, and whether rice straw sandals varied significantly from village to village. Some records suggest that designs were remarkably similar across regions, pointing to a shared practical knowledge. Others argue that there were subtle differences in style, weave, and materials, shaped by local customs and available resources. Either way, the connection between farming and footwear was deeply woven into the rhythms of rural life. There was no waste. Every part of the plan had a purpose. A quirky fact: some sandal makers believed that the straw used for waraji should come from fields that had been harvested by hand, not by sickle. They said it made the fibers longer, less brittle. Whether or not that was true, it speaks to the care and tradition behind even the simplest materials. You continue along the ridge. A flock of birds takes off from the trees below, scattering into the sky. Your waraji press into the soil, still holding strong. You feel a stone shift beneath your foot, but the straps hold firm. You catch your balance without stopping. It's strange how this simple footwear, made from the same plant that fed entire villages, could be so effective. But that was the genius of it. Light, flexible, quiet. You did not fight the land in waraji. You moved with it. And in times of war, that mattered. When armies marched through forests or over narrow mountain trails, silence was essential. The rustle of straw was nothing compared to the clatter of wooden shoes or metal boots. Waraji let a warrior become a shadow, heard only when he chose to be. That stealth became a signature of many samurai patrols, especially those who operated in remote or contested territories. A squad of 5 could move through a wooded slope without drawing notice, simply because their feet made no sound. It's not dramatic, but it's effective. Quiet footsteps won battles long before swords were drawn. You reach the end of the ridge and descend into a narrow valley. A small stream cuts through the path, bubbling softly over rocks. You step across with care, your sandals soaking slightly at the edges. They hold up. The straw swells, but does not come loose. That's another quiet strength of rice straw. It absorbs water, but also releases it quickly. Once the sun returns, your sandals will dry within an hour. There's no odor, no warping, just the scent of wet earth and fibers adjusting to the weather. You think again about the cycle. Straw harvested from a field becomes a sandal. That sandal walks through rain, sun, mud, and dust. When it wears out, it is not discarded in shame. It is returned to the fire, or to the compost heap, or to the side of the road where it softens into the soil. Even in its end, it serves. In a way, you start to feel the same. With each step, the sandals remind you that usefulness isn't measured by shine or longevity. It's measured by presence. You are not meant to last forever. You are meant to be part of the road, not above it. The valley widens. The stream grows quiet again. Your footsteps slow. You glance down, and a smile forms as you notice a fresh blade of grass caught in one of the straps. A little gift from the field. You leave it there. Your path continues, and so do you. Still walking, still listening, still carried by the quiet strength of rice straw. The trail levels out again as it enters a forest of cedar and maple. The canopy above dapples the path in soft light and shifting shadow. You breathe in the coolness of the shade, each breath slower than the last. The scent here is deeper. Damp bark, fallen leaves, the faint musk of soil disturbed by wind. Your waraji make almost no sound now, just the hush of straw brushing earth. There is something about quiet footsteps that changes how you think. You become more careful, more attentive, and it is in this quiet that you start to understand why the samurai valued these sandals so much. It wasn't only about comfort, or cost, or tradition. It was about silence. Samurai trained to move with precision. Every gesture, every motion, had meaning. In swordsmanship, balance and posture determined victory. In life, it was the same. A warrior who moved noisily showed carelessness, but one who walked with the grace of falling leaves, that was someone to respect. Waraji offered the perfect tool for this philosophy. They allowed the wearer to feel the ground but never announced themselves. They taught balance, taught patience. In soft earth or hard stone, they adjusted quietly. Imagine a nighttime patrol, the moon just rising, its pale light slipping through bamboo stalks. A squad of samurai walks single file. No words spoken. Their sandals press into the damp ground, and only the occasional rustle of their sleeves gives them away. No metal clicks, no boots thud, just presence. Historians still explore how much of samurai stealth was truly trained, and how much came from living close to the ground, both physically and philosophically. Some argue that stealth was not a primary focus until the later Edo period. Others believe it was always present, an unspoken discipline refined over generations. You walk more slowly now, not out of fatigue, but from a growing sense of calm. Each step is considered. The toe finds the ground first, then the sole, then the heel. Your weight shifts forward in a smooth roll. Your body follows, steady and upright. There's no need to rush. Your breathing matches your stride. Each inhalation is soft, timed with the rise and fall of your steps. The rhythm becomes like a chant, one you feel more than hear. And then, just ahead, you see something, a narrow footpath veering off the main trail, almost hidden by low brush. A small wooden marker stands beside it, faded and half covered in moss. Curious, you follow. The path is less traveled. The underbrush is thicker. Twigs snap underfoot, but quietly, you adjust again. Lighter steps, more deliberate movements. Soon, the trail opens into a tiny clearing surrounded by trees that rise like quiet guardians. At the center stands a small stone statue, withered and simple. Its surface is worn smooth by years of rain and touch. A few coins lie at its base, alongside folded papers and scattered petals. Offerings, messages, silent prayers. You take a step closer. There, placed beside the statue with quiet reverence, is a single pair of waraji. Old, nearly falling apart, frayed at the edges, soles worn thin, but still, they sit upright. Laces tucked neatly. It feels like someone said thank you with them. You do not touch them. Instead, you sit nearby and let the moment settle. You imagine the person who left them here. Perhaps a monk. Perhaps a soldier on his last pilgrimage. Perhaps someone like you, just walking, listening, learning from the road. A light breeze stirs the clearing. Leaves drift down like slow confetti. Your own sandals feel warm now, molded to your steps. They are not new anymore. They are yours. And you begin to notice something else. The more quietly you walk, the more the world reveals itself. A beetle crawls across the roots. A pair of birds chatter above, then pause as if listening to. Even your thoughts begin to slow, taking on the pace of your footsteps. There's a phrase from old Zen teachings. The quieter you become, the more you can hear. Waraji embody this. They do not impose. They invite. They allow you to hear the path, and to walk in a way that leaves no trace but understanding. A quirky bit of folklore tells of a wandering spirit who could only be seen by those wearing waraji. The spirit, it was said, walked alongside travelers to protect them, but only if they moved quietly enough to match its pace. Loud footsteps scared it away, but with soft sandals and steady breath, it would stay close, humming a tune only the most patient could hear. Whether that story is true or not, you feel something close to it now. A presence, a calm, not magical, but earned. Step by step, you rise and return to the path, your footsteps blending again into the soft hush of the forest floor. The clearing fades behind you, but the silence stays with you. And the sandals, they remain a perfect companion, not because they shine, or last forever, or impress others, but because they let you listen, to your body, to the road, to the world around you. The forest opens gradually into a stretch of open hills, where the trees grow sparse and the grass grows in soft, tall waves. The breeze is stronger now. It combs across the land like gentle fingers, carrying the dry rustle of seed heads and the distant call of a hawk. The sky overhead is a canvas of pale blue brushed with soft white streaks. You continue walking, the waraji bending and flexing with each incline, your steps firm but quiet. This is a good time to step back and compare, not just with what came before, but with what existed elsewhere. While Japan's samurai walked in their straw sandals, warriors in other parts of the world marched in very different shoes. In medieval Europe, for example, knights and soldiers wore boots made from leather. These were thick, heavy, and built for battlefields littered with metal, mud, and more than a few stray arrows. They laced high or folded over the calf, offering insulation and some protection. They were sturdy, yes, but also stiff. A pair might last longer than waraji, but it took far more effort to make and even more to repair. Over in Ming Dynasty China, cloth shoes with padded soles were common, especially among soldiers and travelers. These shoes had more structure than waraji and were usually reinforced with layers of fabric. They were more durable in cities, more suited to paved roads, and occasionally even came with decorative stitching, but they lacked the lightness and breathability of straw. Historians still argue which footwear was better, though it depends entirely on the terrain and the needs of the time. In Japan's humid climate and mountainous regions, the simplicity and airflow of waraji made sense. In the cold, wet fields of northern Europe, thicker leather was more practical. Function followed environment. You stop to rest on a low stone wall, likely the remains of an old rice terrace. It crumbles at the edges but still holds its shape. As you sit, you picture a samurai walking beside a Spanish foot soldier or a Mongol rider, all of them shaped by their land, all of them walking toward a different kind of conflict, wearing shoes that reflected their story. But let's not forget the strange and clever inventions too. In Persia, soldiers sometimes wore sandals with thin wooden soles to keep their feet off the scorching ground. In North Africa, woven leather sandals were dyed with plant pigments and left to bake in the sun. Each region invented its own answer to the same question: how do I move without pain? What makes the waraji interesting is that its answer was unusually humble. No polish, no stitching, just straw, cord, and time. You slip off your sandals and turn them over in your hands. The weave pattern is clean, though it is softening at the heel. You can feel the places where the sole has molded to your weight. They are not pretty, but they are honest. No part of them hides what they are. A quirky little discovery: archaeologists have unearthed waraji preserved in volcanic ash near ancient footpaths, still holding their shape centuries later. They found that even after all that time, the weave told stories, where the pressure had been, where it had frayed first, how much where the heel took versus the toe. A foot's memory, frozen in straw. You slide your sandals back on and continue walking. The ground here is softer, the grass springy beneath your feet. The waraji make no sound at all, just a silent kiss with every step. You begin to feel like a ghost drifting across the hills, present but unnoticed. There is another layer to this silence, too. The samurai believed in Omote and Ura, the outer self and the inner self, what you showed, and what you held inside. Waraji may have been part of that inner self, unseen but essential, a part of you that supported everything without needing recognition. Leather boots clomp and announce. Waraji simply carry, and yet, despite their softness, they were reliable. In times of peace, messengers wore them, farmers worked in them, pilgrims crossed mountains. In times of war, they marched into battle, not always with strength, but with stillness. You pass a tree at the edge of the hill, its branches twisted from years of wind. Beneath it, someone has built a small shelter from stones and bark. Maybe a traveler, long gone. Maybe a hermit. A place for rest, not for living. You leave it undisturbed and keep walking. As the path curves gently downward, your steps fall into perfect alignment. Not hurried, not lazy, just balanced. Your spine straight, your arms loose at your sides, and your feet gliding forward like leaves on water. It's a strange thing to admire, a pair of sandals. But you do, not for their beauty or their craftsmanship alone, but for what they teach. That you don't need more to do more. That a single piece of straw, twisted and tied just right, can carry you through an entire world. And as the hills roll on before you, your sandals hold steady, never complaining, just listening, just guiding. The wind softens as the hills give way to a wide plateau. Here, the land feels open and still, like a breath held between steps. You pause to look around. In every direction, low ridges rise and fall like gentle waves. The path continues, winding through a stand of tall grass and then fading into a grove of trees that sway with a quiet rhythm. You follow it without question, each step light, each moment unhurried. And it's here, in the stillness, that you begin to consider not just the function of the waraji, but its meaning. Not what it does, but what it says. In samurai culture, clothing was always layered with symbolism. A patterned sleeve could indicate family allegiance. The length of a hakama could mark formality or readiness. But footwear carried meaning too, though in subtler ways. Waraji, in their plainness, could speak volumes. To wear waraji in a formal setting, especially when other footwear was available, was sometimes a quiet statement of humility. It told others that the wearer did not see himself as elevated, even if he held rank, that he chose simplicity, that he remained connected to the earth. There are stories of high-ranking warriors who, upon achieving a great victory, chose to return home not in fine robes or lacquered shoes, but in waraji. They wanted to remind themselves, and others, that honor did not grow from comfort, it grew from effort, from discipline, and from endurance. Historians still debate whether these gestures were entirely sincere or partly strategic, perhaps both. In a world where every detail could convey social status, even simplicity had its layers. Wearing straw might reflect deep personal belief, or it might be a message to others. I do not need ornament to prove my strength. You walk a little slower, thinking about that, about how something so basic, so quiet, could carry such weight, how the absence of adornment became its own kind of message. There's another layer to this, too. Waraji were not always clean. They picked up dust, rain, even blood. They frayed and blackened with use, and still, they were worn without shame, because the wear itself told a story. A samurai who entered a hall with fresh waraji might have looked neat, but one whose sandals were faded and worn had clearly traveled far. He had endured. His silence said more than polished heels ever could. You pass by a stone wall, low and moss-covered. Behind it, a small wooden marker leans at an angle. It bears the faded image of a sandal, carved into its surface. Below it, just 3 characters, walk with purpose, no name, no date, just a message. A quirky tale lingers in some regions, that spirits could be kept away by hanging a worn waraji outside the home, not because it frightened them, but because they respected it. They saw it as a sign that the house belonged to someone disciplined, someone who walked far and wisely, someone not to be disturbed. You walk on, the grass brushing gently against your legs. Your waraji press into the soil, silent as always. You begin to feel that you're not just wearing them, you are becoming like them, useful, unflashy, tuned to the world. In many traditional scroll paintings, the waraji is never the focus. You might see it on the feet of a traveler, a monk, or a warrior, but it is always drawn with simplicity. No elaborate shading, no detail, just a few lines. But those lines always tell the truth. You think back to earlier in your walk, when the strap scratched your skin, when the solace felt too thin. Now, you barely notice. Your body has adapted, or perhaps your mind has. That's another lesson the waraji gives, that the discomfort you resist today might become your strength tomorrow. That with time and motion, even friction becomes familiarity. The path dips again, this time into a hollow shaded by cedar trees. The temperature drops slightly. You feel it in your fingertips, but your feet remain steady. The waraji adjust, as they always do. You begin to think of them less as shoes and more as quiet companions. They do not speak, but they listen. They do not shine, but they carry. And in their plainness, they hold space for something greater than appearance, intention. A pair of waraji does not promise comfort. It promises honesty. It does not transform the road. It helps you meet it. As you walk, you consider what your own steps might say. If someone read them like a poem, would they see effort, patience, a willingness to walk without praise? The trail continues beneath your feet. The grass gives way to gravel, and then to packed earth once more. The sky above deepens in color. Evening is not far now. And still, you walk. Still quiet, still thoughtful, still carried by 2 loops of cord and a handful of woven straw. The light tilts further west as you descend into a quiet valley lined with low shrubs and worn stone lanterns. A distant bell rings, soft and echoing, perhaps from a village temple or a lone hermit's altar tucked into the hills. The sound fades slowly, but it lingers in the air like incense. Your waraji press gently into the soft dirt of the path. The rhythm of your steps now feels second nature, like a breath drawn without thought. It's here that your thoughts turn to the women of the warrior class. Often overlooked in grand tales of sword play and strategy, they lived lives marked by the same discipline, the same quiet strength, and yes, the same sandals. Though not all women in samurai households fought, many were trained in self-defense, in household management, in the arts of medicine and correspondence, and they walked just as much, to temples, to markets, to distant relatives. Their waraji wore down just like any others. There's a certain poetry in imagining a samurai woman standing at the edge of a garden, tying the straps of her sandals as her children watch from the veranda. She walks not to battle, but to duty. And still, the ground rises to meet her feet just the same. Historical accounts tell us that women of the samurai class wore simpler robes when traveling, with sturdy sandals made of straw, sometimes woven tighter than the men's for smaller feet. Their tabi were dyed a pale indigo or left plain. There was no call for flash, only function. Historians still debate how often women engaged in battle, or whether their waraji were worn on roads of diplomacy more than those of war. Some records mention women defending their homes during sieges, wielding naginata in waraji caked with dust. Others describe them simply walking to manage rice accounts or arrange marriages. Always with grace, always with intention. A well-known tale speaks of a woman named Nakano, who trained beside her brothers, walked in their footsteps, and later led troops herself. Her sandals were described in one scroll as frayed and patched, but never replaced. She considered their wear a kind of honor. Each broken thread was a memory. You walk along the edge of a small pond now. Its surface mirrors the sky, the trees, and your own silhouette, sandals and all. A dragonfly skims the water, wings humming gently. You pause at the edge and crouch, running your fingers across a smooth stone. Even your shadow, in its quiet shape, tells a story of someone walking with care. A quirky detail. In some households, the sandals of the wife and husband were hung side by side at the entry, not just for storage, but as a sign of shared direction. Guests would glance at the solace, noting whose were more worn, and guess who had been walking farther that season. You imagine such a home, a small garden, the smell of tea brewing, a pair of sandals left drying in the sun. Her sandals, a little smaller, but worn just as deeply. In some regions, women made the family's waraji by hand, not just as a task, but as a quiet act of love. Each twist of straw, each knot in the binding, was a promise. These will carry you. They may not last forever, but they will last as long as you need them to. You rise from the edge of the pond and begin walking again. Your steps slow but sure. You think of the women whose paths you now follow. Their footsteps left no headlines, no monuments, but their sandals told their stories. The trail ahead leads beneath a low arch of trees, their branches interwoven. The sunlight filters through, speckled and gold. You catch the faint scent of plum blossoms, even though you know the season has passed. Perhaps it's just memory, or imagination stirred by tired feet. Each footfall now feels a little like a page being turned, quiet, soft, but meaningful. You are not in a hurry. You are learning to notice more. The way the straps of your waraji tighten when the road slopes. The way the air changes when you pass a shaded grove. The way your thoughts stretch out when your steps grow still. You wonder what stories your own sandals might tell if left behind. Not great battles, not bold speeches, just the quiet bravery of walking onward, one step at a time. In a world that often values noise, waraji, and those who wore them, remind us of the power in silence, in presence, in simply showing up and walking the road, even when no one applauds. And so, you continue, the valley narrowing gently as the path curves once more. The trees hush the wind, the dirt grows cooler, and your feet, steady in their straw wrappings, carry you onward, toward whatever waits around the bend. The valley begins to rise, slowly at first, then more steeply as the path curves upward along a wooded ridge. The trees grow closer together here, their trunks straight and tall, their leaves whispering above like voices carried between generations. Your sandals dig in with each step, finding purchase in the damp soil and moss-covered stones. The forest feels older, quieter. Even the birds speak more softly here. As you climb, your mind drifts to the stories people told about sandals. Not just how they were worn, but what they meant. You remember the tales the weavers shared around the fire, the ones passed from parent to child, the sleepy legends told to pass the time while fingers twisted straw into loops. One of the most enduring stories was about magical waraji. They were said to carry the wearer twice as far with half the effort, or to never wear out, no matter how many mountains they crossed. Some versions claimed they allowed the traveler to walk across water. Others said they whispered directions at night, keeping wanderers from getting lost. These stories weren't meant to be believed in a literal sense. They were reminders that even the most ordinary things, when made with care and used with purpose, could become extraordinary. Children would beg their grandparents for these tales, giggling at the idea of waraji that could fly or talk. But behind the laughter was always a quiet respect. They knew the truth, that magic didn't come from spells. It came from time, attention, and walking the road without complaint. You pass beneath a low branch and notice an old marker beside the trail, a flat stone, half sunken into the earth, with a pair of sandals carved into it. Nothing else. No name, no date, just the outline of 2 feet facing forward. Perhaps a resting place, perhaps a shrine, perhaps just someone's quiet offering. You nod to it in passing and continue. In the mountains, walking took on a different rhythm. The steps were shorter, the balance more precise. Waraji responded well to this terrain. They bent with your foot, adjusted to roots and stones, and gave you the kind of feedback that thick boots could not. The samurai knew this. When moving through forests or rocky passes, they trusted their sandals as much as their weapons. A misstep could be just as dangerous as a missed strike. Historians still debate whether certain types of waraji were designed specifically for mountain terrain. Some scrolls describe thicker soles, others mention reinforced straps, but most agree that skill, more than design, made the difference. A well-worn pair of sandals on an experienced walker's feet was more valuable than a new pair on someone untrained. You stop to rest beside a fallen tree. Its roots twist into the air like frozen waves. You slip off your sandals and examine them. Bits of moss cling to the sole. A few strands have come loose at the heel, but the structure holds. They've become part of you now. Every fray, every soft edge, shaped by the places you've walked. You think of another legend, a tale of a monk who walked the same mountain path for 40 years, wearing the same pair of waraji. Not because they were enchanted, but because he repaired them every evening by the fire. He knew every thread, every weakness, and in knowing them, he gave them strength. A quirky belief in some regions claimed that if you buried your worn waraji at the foot of a cedar tree, your next journey would be safer. People would leave sandals like offerings, tucked into the roots or placed beside small stone statues. Sometimes, flowers were added, or coins, or a folded scrap of paper with a wish written inside. You lace your sandals again and rise. The trail steepens ahead, winding around a narrow bend. You place each foot carefully. The forest hums around you, but your steps are still the softest sound. In this silence, you can feel your thoughts stretch and slow. Your mind matches the cadence of your stride. You stop asking what comes next and start noticing what is here. The curve of a vine around a stone, the softness of a bird's call, the way the sunlight flickers through branches like a lazy heartbeat, and always, beneath it all, your waraji, supporting, guiding, listening. You wonder what stories your own sandals might gather, if they could speak. Not heroic tales, just small ones. The rhythm of your breath, the shift of your weight, the moment you pause to rest beside a hidden stream. These quiet memories are what the old tales understood, that even when the road is ordinary, the journey is not. That magic lives in the solace of worn sandals, not because they're special, but because they've walked with you long enough to become part of your story. You reach the top of the ridge and look out. The valley below glows in the last light of day. The trees stretch to the horizon. The wind stirs gently at your back. You take a step forward. The sandals bend. The cords hold. The story continues. The ridge tapers into a narrow path that weaves downhill, curling through clusters of cedar and plum trees. The scent in the air changes as you descend, sweeter now, with hints of earth and bark. Your waraji adjusts with each shift in the slope, hugging the contours of the path. The light is softer too, brushing the trail in golden streaks. Somewhere ahead, you hear the quiet clink of wind chimes. As the trees part, a small shrine appears on the edge of a clearing. Its roof is moss-covered, its wood darkened by years of weather. Stone lanterns line the entry, and a narrow walkway of smooth pebbles leads to the front. Hanging from the eaves are bundles of straw, some braided, some tied into loops, others shaped unmistakably into sandals. You step quietly toward the entrance. A few visitors have left offerings, a bowl of rice, some plum wine, and a single sprig of pine. Beside them rests an old pair of waraji, carefully laid out side by side, their soles curved and darkened by many miles. This shrine is not grand. It does not glow with gold or echo with songs, but it hums with reverence, not for wealth, but for the everyday, for the road, for the walk itself. You bow and sit near the edge of the platform, letting your legs rest. You think about the place of sandals in ceremonies, how even something so humble found its way into sacred rituals. In some temples, travelers would present their worn waraji as a thank you, not for protection granted, but for having made it through the journey. The sandals were placed on altars, not for worship, but as testimony, proof that the road had been walked, and that effort had been made with sincerity. Historians still examine the depth of this practice. Some believe it was a holdover from older animist traditions, where objects carried spirits and memory. Others see it as a symbol of gratitude, a way of acknowledging not just the destination, but the tool that helped you arrive. You watch a breeze lift one of the straw bundles. It sways gently, the loose ends brushing against the shrine wall. There is something peaceful about it. No rush, no urgency, just the slow breathing of time. A quirky old practice from mountain shrines involved tying miniature waraji and hanging them from trees, not as footwear, but as prayers for safe travel. Each tiny sandal carried a wish, sometimes for a successful harvest, sometimes for a loved one's return, sometimes for the strength to keep walking. You take off your own sandals and place them beside you. The soles are speckled with dust and bits of leaf. One strap has frayed more than the other. You smooth it with your fingers and retie it slowly, gently. Nearby, a monk appears, sweeping the steps. He doesn't speak, but nods as he passes. His own waraji are wrapped in cloth at the toe, worn but steady. He moves with the kind of grace that comes from doing the same motion every day. Not boredom, ritual, each stroke of the broom, each step, part of a rhythm that spans years. You sit quietly, just breathing, just listening. The wind chimes sound again. A sparrow hops across the stones. Then, slowly, you rise. You slip your sandals back on, feeling the familiar pull of the cords across your feet. They feel warm from the sun, softened from the walk, ready for more. You bow to the shrine one last time, and as you turn to leave, you notice something carved faintly into the post near the door. It is simple, just a few words, step by step. That is the way. You smile, because you know exactly what it means. You rejoin the path, letting the forest close in gently behind you. The road is smoother here. Each step lands with ease. Your breath is even, your hands relaxed, and beneath you, the waraji speak their soft language, not of glory, not of grandeur, but of presence, of showing up, of walking forward. You understand now that ceremony in always incense and bells. Sometimes it's the act of walking quietly, of tying your sandals with care, of placing one foot in front of the other with a peaceful heart. That's the beauty of the waraji. It carries you not only through the world, but through the space inside you. It teaches not just endurance, but grace. And so, you keep going, the shrine fading behind you, the forest deepening ahead. The sandals, once stiff and new, now move with your body like memory. Step by step, you walk toward nothing in particular, and everything at once. As dusk approaches, the forest path begins to glow with the soft amber light of late afternoon. The leaves above flicker gently, their undersides catching the sun as the branches move with the breeze. The air has cooled just slightly. It is the kind of moment when shadows grow longer and sounds grow softer. You walk on, your waraji muffling your footsteps, your breath slow and quiet. Then, as the path curves once more, you come upon a clearing. At its center stands a tall cedar tree, ancient and wide, its bark furrowed and streaked with lichen. Around its base are small stone markers, worn smooth by weather. Some are tilted, others half sunken into the ground. You realize this is no ordinary grove. It is a resting place, and it is not just for people. Nestled among the stones are objects: a rested bell, a length of prayer cloth, a folded fan, and several pairs of sandals. Some are old and brittle, with cords crumbling and soles split. Others look as if they were placed only recently, their weave still intact. You pause, feeling something shift in the air. Not fear, but quiet. The kind that makes you instinctively lower your voice, even when you are alone. The kind that makes your footsteps more careful. This is a place of memory. Japan is filled with stories of spirits, some playful, some sorrowful, some simply quiet companions of the road. And in many of those tales, the ghost wears waraji, not the tattered robes you might expect, or the clinking chains of horror tales. Just a simple pair of straw sandals, trailing softly through the mist. One story tells of a traveler who, walking alone on a mountain path, heard footsteps behind him. When he stopped, the sound stopped. When he moved, they began again. But when he turned to look, no one was there, only the faint marks of waraji in the dirt behind him. Another legend tells of a monk who gave his last pair of sandals to a beggar. That night, as he rested in a roadside hut, he saw a figure watching from the woods. The next morning, his path was clear of danger, though the storm had torn trees down all around. Locals said the spirit of the beggar had walked before him, clearing the way. Historians still debate the meaning behind these stories. Some say they reflect respect for the mundane. Others see them as symbols of the thin line between the physical world and the spiritual, especially on lonely roads where the only sound is your own breath and the faint brush of straw on stone. You sit at the edge of the clearing and take off your sandals. You feel the earth beneath your feet, cool, damp, alive. You look at your waraji now in a different light, not just as footwear, but as participants in your journey. They have touched every mile you have. They've carried you through silence and through song. A quirky belief held in some regions claimed that old waraji should never be thrown away casually. To do so might invite bad luck. Instead, they were burned with a whispered thank you or tied to a tree, left to fade gently in the wind and rain. It was not superstition, really, more a form of appreciation. You rise and walk slowly around the clearing, noting how each offering has its own character. Some sandals are tiny, likely once worn by children. Others are broad, heavy, perhaps left by a farmer or a merchant. But all have been placed with care, and though the stories of spirits in straw may seem fanciful, there is something deeply human in them. They remind us that even the smallest things can carry memory, that even after we have moved on, something of our presence remains. You put your sandals back on, feeling the warmth they have held from your skin. The straps settle back into their familiar positions, and the soles, worn but strong, grip the ground as if to say, we are not done yet. The light is changing now. The trees cast long shadows, and the air hums with the sound of crickets. You walk on, a little more slowly, listening. You wonder how many others have passed through this path. How many of them walked with burdens, with hope, with silence. How many were accompanied by stories, or by memories that whispered like footsteps behind them. And you wonder too, how many of them, just like you, stopped at this clearing and felt something stir. Not fear, just the soft recognition that walking carries more than motion. It carries meaning. Your waraji make no sound as you leave the grove. The forest closes gently behind you, and the wind moves through the branches in long, even sighs. You do not turn back. You do not need to. You carry the memory with you, in each step, in each quiet fold of straw against your skin, in the soft presence that walks with you, seen or unseen. The trail widens again, the trees thinning as you come upon a village tucked quietly into the curve of a hillside. Smoke drifts lazily from thatched rooftops. A stream runs behind the houses, its current slow and clear. You can hear the faint sound of laughter, the clatter of a cooking pot, and the soft chop of wood being split in rhythm. It's the end of the day, and the village breathes in that low, golden light just before twilight. As you approach, your sandals brush the gravel of the path leading into the square. A boy looks up from his task, squinting against the light, then goes back to weaving. He sits cross-legged near the door of a small wooden house, holding a half-finished sandal in his lap. His fingers work slowly, unevenly, but with focus. A coil of straw rests beside him, and a pair of worn waraji sits just beyond his reach. You stop at a respectful distance. He notices you but does not speak. Beside him, an older man, likely his grandfather, watches silently. His own hands are folded, resting on his knees. The lines on his face suggest years of wind and work. He nods gently to you, then turns his gaze back to the boy. And just like that, you're part of a story in progress. The Sandal Maker's Apprentice. It's a scene repeated across generations. The young learning the old ways, not in a classroom, not from books, but by watching, by doing, by making mistakes, then trying again. You take a seat nearby. The older man reaches for his tools, a smooth stick for pressing the cords tight, a bowl of water for softening the straw, and a small knife for trimming excess. He begins to weave as well, his movements smooth and sure, like river water flowing over stones. The boy glances at him often, checking his pace, adjusting his own fingers. You watch as the sandal takes shape, not in a rush, but in steady progress. The apprentice speaks softly, asking about a loop that will not sit flat. The older man replies just as softly, not correcting, but guiding. Their voices barely rise above the breeze. Historians note that waraji making was often passed down informally like this, within families or small communities. There were no formal schools, but everyone knew who made the best sandals. Those who excelled did not brag. They simply let their work speak. You are handed a bundle of straw, and the boy offers you a place beside him. With a small smile, you accept. The straw is stiff at first. You soak it in the water, press it with your fingers, and begin to twist it into a cord. It's harder than it looks. Your fingers fumble. The strands slip apart. The boy chuckles once, then shows you his own first failed attempt. It looks like a nest unraveling in slow motion. You try again. Loop, twist, pull. The rhythm is different from walking, but it has a cadence of its own, a kind of gentle focus. You feel the texture of the straw, the tension in the cord. You realize that to make a sandal is to think ahead, to plan each move, to stay with the work, even when it frays. A quirky tradition once held that a sandal made by an apprentice should be worn for only a single journey. That way, the road could teach the maker what the hands could not. A worn strap meant a weak knot. A loose heel meant poor alignment. The sandals themselves became the teacher. The older man finishes a pair and sets it aside. He picks up another bundle and begins again, without pause. His sandals, resting beside the mat, are nearly flat from wear. You can see how they've shaped to his feet. Each step has left its imprint. The boy completes his practice sandal and offers it to the older man. It is imperfect. One strap is tight, the other sags. But the form is there, the shape, the effort. The older man nods once. That is enough. You understand now why waraji were never mass-produced. They were too personal, too reliant on feel. No two pairs were ever truly alike. The weave reflected the maker. The wear reflected the walker. The village slowly winds down for the evening. Lamps are lit behind paper windows. A dog barks, then quiets. The air thickens with the scent of cooked rice and grilled fish. You return the straw to the boy and bow slightly. He bows back, then returns to his work. The older man gives you a small nod, his expression unreadable but kind. You know without words that you've been welcomed, if only briefly, into something lasting. You stand, retying your own sandals. They feel a little more precious now, not because they are rare, but because someone like that boy once made them. Someone who struggled with the first loop, who listened to a quiet teacher, who learned by doing. You step out of the square and follow the path beyond the village. The sky has begun to fade into a deep blue. The first stars appear, the wind cools your face, and with each step, your sandals whisper the same story. Made with care, carried with purpose, shaped by the journey. The evening deepens, the horizon is brushed with the last streaks of orange, giving way to that quiet blue that comes just before true darkness. Fireflies blink lazily above the grass. A few stars appear, steady and small, as if stitched into the sky by an invisible hand. You follow the path by the light of the fading sky, your waraji brushing gently against the gravel, your breath steady and unhurried. With each step, you begin to think about how sandals, so easily worn, were not so easily thrown away. Waraji were valued, not just in their making, but in their afterlife. They were patched, rewoven, sometimes resoled with fresh straw if the upper cords held strong. To discard them carelessly would have been seen as wasteful, even thoughtless. You picture a samurai kneeling by a fire, gently picking apart the frayed sole of a sandal. He separates the cords, trimming the damaged ends and preparing to weave in new strands. It's not a grand moment, no audience, no drama, just a quiet act of care, done with the same precision he gives to sharpening his blade or folding his robes. In a world where replacement was not always possible, repair was a skill to be proud of. Some travelers carried a small pouch of straw specifically for this, just enough for an emergency patch. If a strap broke during a march, they would stop beneath a tree, untie the sandal, and begin to work. Fingers practiced, the new loop would be tied into the old frame. It might not look pretty, but it would hold. Historians still debate how long a well-made pair of waraji could last. Some sources claim only 2 or 3 days of hard travel. Others suggest a skilled walker could stretch them to a week or more. Either way, the assumption was always the same. Sandals were out. That is their nature. But rather than resent this, the samurai accepted it. Some even welcomed it. A sandal that wore out meant a journey had been taken. A task had been completed. A path had been followed. You stop beside a quiet stream, its surface dark and glossy in the evening light. You slip off your sandals and examine them. One heel is worn thin. The knot at the ankle has begun to loosen. You pull it tight again, smooth the strap with your fingers, and set them beside you. A quirky village custom you recall comes to mind. On the last day of a long journey, some travelers would bury their worn waraji at the base of a tree or tuck them beneath a roadside altar. They did not see this as discarding, but as offering, a way to thank the path, the land, and the straw for their service. Some even wrote brief poems and tied them to the straps. Lines like "You carried me far, though you were thin," or "Each stone you met, I felt in my heart." Simple words, but full of feeling. A reminder that even the smallest companions deserve gratitude. You remember a story about an old sandal maker who refused to throw away his scraps. Every bit of straw, every broken strap, he kept in a wooden box. When asked why, he said that even if the journey is over, its pieces still have something to teach. You slip your sandals back on and rise. The night air is cooler now. The wind carries the scent of damp leaves and distant wood smoke. A few moths flit through the air ahead, drawn to lantern light somewhere farther down the path. As you walk, you think about how sandals, like people, are not defined by how long they last, but by how far they go, and by how they are treated when they start to wear down. There is quiet dignity in mending, in not giving up at the first fray, in learning the shape of the wear and responding with care, not replacement. This mindset extended far beyond footwear for the samurai. It was a way of living, of respecting use, of knowing that what is touched by time is not ruined, but proven. You reach a small ridge and pause to look back. The path behind you glows faintly, illuminated by memory. You know every bend, every stone, every tree that leaned just a little to one side. Your feet remember them too. Your waraji have captured them in their weave, like soft impressions of the road itself. And tomorrow, perhaps, you'll repair them, add a new strand of straw, retie a loose cord, not because they are broken, but because they are worthy of continuing. The sandals you wear are not perfect, but they are yours, and that means something. So you walk on, into the cooling air, into the quiet. One step, then another, held by the gentle grip of old straw, worn but whole. The path turns gently downhill again, winding through a patch of open fields, lit by the faint silver glow of moonlight. You walk slowly now, not from weariness, but because this part of the night asks for slowness. The stars above are clear and steady, the air soft with dew. Your sandals brush quietly through patches of tall grass, each step crisp and light. A small wooden gate appears ahead, its frame leaning slightly to one side. Beyond it, a narrow trail stretches toward a cluster of houses sleeping under the stars. Just outside the gate, you see something curious, a wooden sign with faded writing, and beneath it, a small collection box. One that, oddly enough, lists sandal sizes. You've stumbled upon a Waraji tax station. Yes, it sounds strange, but for a time in certain regions, there were actual sandal taxes. Travelers, merchants, and pilgrims passing through had to leave behind a pair of Waraji, or pay a few coins instead. The sandals were not resold, but collected and offered to those in need, or used by traveling officials who arrived unprepared. The tax was not always enforced. Sometimes, it was little more than tradition, a quirky custom turned official. In some villages, the gatekeeper might simply nod at your feet and let you pass, asking only that you bow to the post. In others, they'd accept worn-out pairs without complaint, preferring sincerity over condition. Historians still debate how widespread this practice really was. Some argue it was symbolic, more about sharing and community than revenue. Others believe it was a way for local authorities to supply their soldiers and messengers without constantly sourcing materials. Either way, the Waraji tax became a curious footnote in the long scroll of travel customs. You kneel by the box and peek inside. There are a few pairs of sandals, old and thin, some missing loops or fraying at the edges, yet they rest with quiet dignity, each one a story of miles walked, stones stepped over, and paths remembered. You do not leave your sandals behind, but you bow to the sign, a small gesture of respect for those who passed before you, and for the straw beneath your feet. Beyond the gate, the road is lined with small markers, flat stones etched with symbols of sandals. Some have names, others just shapes. This part of the trail is old, touched by hundreds of footsteps, and the earth has settled into a well-worn groove. Your Waraji fit into it perfectly. You remember how light they felt when you first put them on, and how awkward. The straps rubbed, the soles were strange. But now, they are almost invisible. They respond to your body without hesitation, and your stride matches the rhythm of the land beneath you. In the distance, a lantern flickers on a porch. You hear the soft jingle of wind chimes. A dog lets out one bark, then falls silent. The village sleeps, but the road continues. A quirky rule in some villages required that anyone entering at night take off their sandals and carry them until they reached their lodging. The idea was to walk softly, to remind visitors that nighttime was a gift, a time for quiet feet and softer hearts. You step carefully now, out of instinct more than rule. Each footfall lands with care. You feel the grain of the soil beneath the straw, a stone here, a dip there, nothing painful, just textured, real, and as you pass under a low archway of trees, your thoughts drift to the people who once enforced the sandal tax. Did they inspect each pair? Did they laugh at the ones too small or marvel at the ones too worn? Did they wonder where each traveler had come from, or where they were headed next? You imagine them collecting the sandals at day's end, tying them together with rope, and hanging them to dry on a line stretched between two posts, rows of shoes swaying in the wind like wind chimes made of travel. You pass a small wayside shrine tucked into the corner of the field. On its wooden platform, 3 pairs of tiny straw sandals rest in a neat row. Children's sizes. You bow gently, even if no one is there to see. Your Waraji continue to carry you forward, not loudly, not quickly, but faithfully. And that's the story these sandals have always told. One of presence, of offering what they can, then resting without regret. As the night deepens, the path curves again toward a patch of trees. The stars above brighten just a little, and the wind turns cool. Your footsteps stay soft, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because you are not just walking a trail, you are walking among memories. The trees return in clusters now, their trunks silver in the moonlight, their branches heavy with late summer leaves. You walk beneath them in silence, the soft tap of your waraji like a heartbeat against the path. The village behind you is still. No doors creak, no voices carry. All is calm. With each step forward, you feel how the world changes, not dramatically, but in small shifts. The air has grown cooler, the insects quieter, and ahead, as the path widens, you find yourself entering a town unlike the ones before. There is something careful about it. The stone lanterns are intact, the roofs orderly, even the fences are swept clean. You have stepped into a place touched by peace. During the Tokugawa era, long after the warring states had laid down their arms, Japan entered a time of stillness. Roads were no longer traveled for battle, but for trade, pilgrimage, poetry, and politics. Samurai still walked, but they walked differently. Their pace slowed, their gaze lifted. Their waraji, though the same in form, took on a different meaning. Here, in this quiet town, you begin to see the traces of that shift. Outside one home, a row of sandals hangs neatly on a wooden beam. They are not worn out. They have been dried carefully, their cords were tied, their soles brushed clean. Nearby, a small sign offers sandal repair for a modest fee. Sandal makers in peaceful times became artisans in their own right. They wove more precisely, chose better straw, added personal touches. Some even dyed the cords with indigo or trimmed the soles with patterned cloth. The waraji, once only a tool of necessity, became something slightly more, an expression. Historians still debate whether this change came from prosperity or simply time. With fewer battles to rush toward, people had the space to notice beauty in the everyday. Even something as plain as a straw sandal could hold aesthetic value. You pause at a market stall closed for the night. Hanging from its awning are several pairs of waraji for sale. One has soles woven thicker than usual, perhaps for long journeys. Another is small and delicate, its cords dyed a faint blue. One pair is unfinished, the ends still waiting to be tied. A quirky custom from towns like this. Some sandal makers placed a tiny pebble inside the heel of each pair they sold. Not enough to hurt, just enough to remind the wearer that every step mattered, that you should not walk without awareness. You continue past the shops and homes, noticing how each doorstep has a small space for shoes. Some hold geta, wooden clogs. Others hold straw sandals arranged neatly. And outside one home, you see two pairs side by side. One new, one old. Perhaps a reminder, perhaps a farewell. In peaceful times, waraji also began to appear in art, not in the center of the canvas, but at its edges. A figure walking through snow, sandals just visible beneath a robe. A monk bowing at a shrine, his feet dusted with ash, straw barely clinging to his soles. They symbolized humility, effort, transience. You reach the center of the town, where a small temple sits under the boughs of an old cherry tree. Though it is not in bloom, the tree holds presence. You sit on the edge of the steps and remove your sandals, letting your feet rest against the cool stone. They ache, but in that satisfying way that says you have moved with purpose. A soft bell chimes from within the temple. One note, then silence. You look at your waraji, worn at the heel, slightly flattened at the arch, the toe strap rough from days of wear, and yet they are still ready to carry you. With a few adjustments, they will last another stretch, maybe two. That was the thing about sandals in times of peace. They were not made to hurry. They were made to last. People walked more slowly, more deliberately. Journeys were still taken, but the path itself became the destination. You remember a saying from one of the villages, "A sandal that wears slowly brings longer thoughts." It suggests that in the absence of battle, people turned inward. The road became a teacher of patience, and the waraji its chalk. You tie your sandals again and rise. The night has deepened. The sky above glows with stars. The town is asleep, but you walk through it with care, your steps light, your heart calm. And as you leave its edge and return to the open trail, you carry with you the feeling of peace, of measured breath, of sandals made not just to carry warriors, but to carry all who seek meaning in the quiet rhythm of the road. The night air grows cooler as you leave the town behind and enter a stretch of open fields. The moon casts long silver shadows over the grass, turning each blade into a shining thread. The path beneath your feet is softer here, worn smooth by countless travelers. Your waraji make only the faintest sound as you walk, a quiet murmur against the vastness of the night. You think now about the final days of the samurai era, when roads grew busier with merchants, pilgrims, and officials. The centuries-old paths, once reserved for warriors, became highways for all walks of life. Waraji remained a common sight, worn not only by soldiers but by farmers, poets, and merchants alike. There was a gentle irony in this transition. The humble sandals, once symbols of martial discipline and readiness, now carried stories of trade, faith, and everyday life. They became witnesses to change. Historians still discuss how this shift affected the meaning of waraji. Some suggest that, as the samurai class declined, the sandals became more democratized, worn freely by anyone who needed reliable footwear. Others argue that their symbolism faded, replaced by convenience and practicality. Either way, the waraji held their place, humble but essential. You stop for a moment beside a small shrine tucked beneath an ancient pine tree. At its base lies a pile of worn sandals, carefully stacked. Nearby, a weathered wooden plaque reads simply, "For safe journeys." Travelers over the centuries had left their footwear here, tokens of gratitude, hope, or remembrance. A quirky old practice from some regions involved tying a tiny strip of paper, inscribed with a wish or prayer, to the straps of new waraji. The paper was meant to protect the wearer and guide their steps. Sometimes these papers were preserved in temples, collected as offerings. You kneel and place your own sandals among the pile, not to leave them forever, but as a moment of pause. The rough straw feels familiar beneath your fingers. The cords are soft but strong. As you rise and resume walking, the path leads through rolling hills bathed in moonlight. The world feels vast but intimate. Each step feels lighter, as if the road itself welcomes you. You think about the journeys ahead, about the countless feet that have followed this path before. How many have carried hope, fear, love, or sorrow? How many have walked barefoot, in wooden clogs, or in sandals like these? And you feel a deep connection, not just to the past, but to the act of walking itself. Waraji are more than just sandals. They are a symbol of persistence, of embracing impermanence, of moving forward despite wear and tear. With every step, you carry those lessons. The straw beneath your feet is fragile but faithful. Your stride is steady and quiet. The stars wheel overhead. The night air hums softly. You are walking a path both ancient and new, and your sandals carry you home. The road narrows as you approach a dense stand of bamboo, the tall stalks rising like silent sentinels. Their leaves whisper secrets in the breeze, and shafts of moonlight pierce the canopy, creating patterns of light and shadow that dance beneath your feet. Your waraji press softly on the earth, their woven solace bending effortlessly to every curve and stone. Walking here feels sacred. The air is cooler, fresher. The sounds of the night, crickets, distant owls, the rustling of leaves, are clearer, sharper. Each step you take in your straw sandals seems to echo the footsteps of countless travelers who have passed this way before you. You begin to reflect on the cultural significance of waraji beyond mere utility. In many rural communities, they were more than footwear. They were a rite of passage, a symbol of preparedness, a humble badge worn by pilgrims, merchants, and soldiers alike. The very act of weaving a pair was tied to patience, skill, and respect for the journey. Historians often point to the role of waraji in religious pilgrimages. People walked hundreds of miles to sacred sites, their sandals wearing thin as their devotion grew. To lose a sandal was to risk being stranded, yet to repair one was a sign of perseverance. Some pilgrims carried extra pairs, neatly tied to their backs, ready for the next leg of their pilgrimage. There are stories of travelers leaving worn waraji at temple steps as offerings, a gesture of thanks for safe passage. These offerings symbolize the physical and spiritual journey completed. The sandals bore witness to trials endured and faith maintained. You stop beside a small, moss-covered stone statue of Jesus, protector of travelers and children. At its base, several pairs of miniature straw sandals hang from strings. They sway gently in the night breeze, tiny and delicate, carrying the prayers of those who seek protection. A quirky local custom involved children making and offering these tiny waraji during festivals, believing that their small creations would guard family members far away on journeys. You sit quietly for a moment, feeling the coolness of the earth beneath your feet, the weight of history woven into every fiber of your sandals. Your steps resume, steady and light. The bamboo thins as you move forward, the path widening once more. Ahead, the faint glow of lanterns signals the edge of another village. Your waraji, though worn, hold fast. They carry you gently, just as they have carried countless others before. With each step, you feel more connected, not just to the ground beneath you, but to the enduring spirit of the road and the people who walk it. The path leads you gently out of the bamboo grove and into a quiet valley bathed in the soft glow of early morning light. Mist clings to the grass, and dew sparkles on the leaves like tiny jewels. The air is crisp and fresh, filled with the distant song of a lone bird greeting the dawn. Your footsteps in the straw sandals fall softly upon the earth, a gentle rhythm in harmony with the waking world. As you walk, you feel the culmination of your journey, not just through the landscape, but through time itself. The sandals you wear are worn but faithful, carrying not only your weight, but the stories of countless travelers who have walked before you. Each frayed strand, each softened loop, speaks of endurance, care, and quiet purpose. You think back to all you have learned about waraji, their making, their wearing, their meaning, how humble straw became a symbol of connection to the earth and to oneself, how simple loops of cord tied the past to the present, discipline to grace, and the solitary traveler to a shared human experience. Historians continue to explore the nuances of waraji, debating their place in the lives of samurai and common folk alike. Some see them as mere necessity, others recognize them as quiet emblems of resilience and humility. What remains clear is their lasting imprint on culture, art, and the very fabric of journeys taken. You pause beside a small stream that glistens in the morning light. Kneeling, you remove your sandals and dip your feet into the cool water. The sensation is refreshing and soothing, a moment of peace before the next step. You watch as droplets fall from your toes, rippling the surface. A quaint local tradition holds that washing your feet in a stream at journeys and cleanses not just the body, but the spirit. It honors the road traveled and prepares you for the path ahead. As you slip your waraji back on, you feel a gentle ease. The sandals have softened, molded perfectly to your feet. They are no longer merely footwear, they are companions on your journey, familiar and trusted. You rise and take your first step forward into the new day. The trail stretches before you, inviting, quiet, endless. Your breath is steady, your heart calm. The worn straw beneath your feet carries you gently yet firmly onward. In this moment, walking becomes more than movement. It is meditation, it is presence, it is grace. And as you continue along the path, you know that no matter where the road leads, you walk with patience, with purpose, and with the enduring spirit of the waraji beneath your feet. Now, as your journey draws softly to a close, feel the steady rhythm of your steps slow to a gentle rest. The straw sandals, worn but reliable, carry you no further for the night. The road stretches behind, quiet and waiting, while the world breathes softly around you. Take a deep breath in, let it fill your chest with calm, and as you exhale, release the day's worries, the restless thoughts, the busy noise. Your feet rest easy now, and your mind follows. Remember the quiet strength of these simple sandals, woven by patient hands, softened by countless steps, shaped by care and presence. They teach us that even the smallest things can carry great meaning, that endurance is quiet, not loud, that grace comes not from speed, but from steady, thoughtful motion. As the stars twinkle softly above and the night wraps around you like a gentle cloak, feel your body relax, your breath deepen. You are safe, you are calm, you are carried. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight. May your steps tomorrow be as steady and sure as those taken in Waraji. Good night, and sweet dreams.